Thank you. Welcome to Denver. So we work for the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, and specifically the producing wing, the Denver Center Theater Company. And as part of that, we created Off Center at the Jones about 4 years ago with the help of the Innovation Lab for the Performing Arts.
And Off Center, is my mic on? Yes. Off Center was in response to a challenge that the theater company was facing, and a challenge that most arts organizations have been facing, which is that as our traditional audiences age, we found that younger and newer audiences are not attending in the same ways and are looking for different types of experiences. And we've tried all sorts of different experiments in marketing in different ways, in creating a young professionals group, but all of that was adding on. We're good. All of that was adding on to what we were already doing. Do we have a mic issue? No, we're good. Okay, sorry. Raise it up. Are we good now?
Do you want to sing a little? Just make sure? Okay.
525. Okay.
Ready.
All of those experiments were dealing with programming that we were already doing. Oh, we're going handheld, folks. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Check.
Thank you.
Back up, plan B. All of those programs were dealing with programming that we were already doing. And we decided that in order to really authentically reach a new audience, we needed to shift our assumptions and create new programming that spoke directly to that audience.
So one of our first steps was we dedicated our smallest theater, the Jones, to do this type of programming, to be our lab space and to be a test kitchen for the larger organization. And the goal was to use that space to investigate what actually attracts the next generation of artists and audiences.
We created a separate brand for Off Center because we felt that it was important to speak to our audiences differently, to have a safe space where we can experiment, where we're not affecting the larger brand of the organization, but where our learning can still infect and inspire the rest of the organization.
And so we started with researching, who is our target audience? And, we wanted everyone who was going out in Denver but not coming here, who is seeking those unique experiences, those awesome nights out, but not counting theater in the mix. And so young, but more specifically adventurous. And so then we were like, so what are they going to do? Where are they going and why?
And in Denver, first and foremost, people are sports fans, as you probably saw this morning when there was a depression over the city after last night's loss.
The first loss.
The first loss. Live music is very big in Denver, and we're very lucky to have one of the most beautiful and spectacular live music venues, outdoor music venues in Red Rocks. Food trucks are big. We have all sorts of different food truck events. There's a great craft beer culture here in Denver. There's weekly bike parties where people dress up in costumes and congregate in the city on bikes. And if you came in Saturday night, you probably encountered the zombie crawl. Denver proudly hosts the largest zombie gathering in the country every year before Halloween. So what do all of these different types of events have in common?
I mean, there's always beer, there's drinking, there's food, it's social and informal, dressing up in costumes, but actually the people going dressing up in costumes, and the audience is always playing an active role. And probably the event was designed with the audience experience at the center to begin with.
So why are people who go to these types of events not coming to the theater?
Our ticket prices, our complex, which we have nicknamed the castle because it's so large and so hard to navigate, finding a place to park, paying even more to park, you cannot have your cell phone on, no talking, no eating, no drinking, just sitting and watch. So, and depending on who you are, you're not seeing people like yourself in the crowd. So there's no sense of belonging.
And all of this is assuming that you're interested in the content to begin with, which we've found that many young and new audiences are, but there's other people who aren't as interested in traditional theater. One of our focus groups said that theater is a bad brand, and that was a pretty shocking moment for us that inspired a lot of this action.
So we took all of these thoughts and narrowed them down to what we call a recipe for Off Center. It's our way of unifying our work, but also a new way of articulating a vision statement. So it's just 5 easy steps that you can get everyone to rally around, and they're concise and easy to follow.
Our first ingredient is immersive, which is about extending the experience outside of the theater before, during, and after the show.
Second is convergent, which is collaborating across a variety of art forms and genres and using a lot of different technology.
Our third ingredient is connective, which is about creating a community hub for artists and audiences.
Four is inventive, and that goes to us creating our own brand so that we could be extra risky and not affect the parent brand, and also just focus on learning. And part of what we learned from the Innovation Lab is the process we go through so that we consider every audience a focus group and every show a prototype.
And our final ingredient is now, which is the ability to be more spontaneous and immediate with our programming, and that our programming is centered around the work of younger, newer artists.
And so creating the recipe was the best way for us to start, and the ingredients may or may not apply to what you're trying to do, but the idea of making a very simple list that you can share both internally and externally is a good way to start.
And we found that the recipe informs not only what we do, but how we do it. And so as you're thinking about creating your own recipe, I think it's interesting to explore how your recipe can inspire both your product and your process.
And the recipe didn't solve it all. So we also had to look at what our structures were and how we could actually do this type of programming. And our artistic director, Kent Thompson, thought it was important that if we were going to do programming for younger and more adventurous people, then that should be led by those people. So lucky us, we got to be the curators of Off-Center.
And again, it was important to us that we were using new language to talk about these new roles. As curators, we're generating the seeds of ideas. We're bringing together different diverse artists to work on those ideas and help us fully realize them. And we're thinking about the entire audience experience, not just what happens on stage, figuring out, looking at the show through the audience's eyes.
And there's a lot of things that we do differently. We don't often have a script. We sometimes rehearse 5 times before we actually do the show. And we're just looking at the total environment, from outside to the bathrooms to the bar.
So the old model is about passive participation, which may be an oxymoron. But the audience comes, they sit down, they take in our art. But research has shown, and our experiences have shown, that audiences are looking now for something different. They want to be more actively involved in the art.
So we wanted to experiment with doing a show that focused on participation, but that it just also couldn't exist without it. And so we call that authentic audience participation. And one of our steps was making the theater more audience-friendly, so we leveled the stage so there was no separation between artists and audience. We put the bar backstage, because like in your house with the kitchen, that's where you always end up, so to just try to make it more friendly.
And our first prototype was called the Ultimate WII Baseball Game. We were interested in the sports culture in Denver and really wanted to start training our audiences to use our space differently and to act differently inside of the theater. So we put on a baseball game. We figured that in order to have the successful lab space, we needed them treating it differently. So the sports was the goal there. And
it was literally a stadium as much as it could be. We had a little mini baseball diamond and a concession stand and plenty of free beer. And as you came in the door, you were assigned to a team with a red or a blue shirt that you could decorate and put your number on and your name. And this is no different than like Sleep No More with masks or other shows that involve costumes. It's just the easiest way to feel involved and to also connect with audiences beyond the people that you just came with.
You're literally part of a team. And then once the game started, we played 9 innings of WII baseball on the big screen. We had a jumbotron with a kiss cam, live play-by-play commentators. There was a mascot. And it felt like a baseball game. And what was really exciting to us as we played it and as we watched it was that some people got really into playing and some people just wanted to sit back and cheer for their team. And there were opportunities for everyone to be involved at their comfort level. But also, the environment felt like you were watching a sporting event, like you were cheering on your favorite team.
Broncos.
Not last night.
And so it was our first show, so we learned a bunch from doing it. But it was easy to transform the Jones, and people liked participating because it was the right environment, and they definitely performed more like they were at a sports game than at a theater. And even now when we have shows that have actors, we try to find the ways that they're authentically contributing, the audience is authentically contributing, so that it changes their experience once the show starts, but also the performer's experience.
And we found that when the audience experience and audience interaction is central to the show, they're more authentically engaged in the show itself and have more of a stake in its outcome because they help to create it.
So how do you create authentic audience participation? One thing is you build the audience design throughout the whole process of building the show versus just adding in some audience engagement things at the end.
We work across departments to create a shared vision for what we're doing so that there's buy-in across the organization and it's not just an isolated event happening in an isolated part of the organization. And as I mentioned before, we're making sure there's different levels of participation so everyone's comfortable. You're not forced to go on stage and do something that makes you feel really awkward if that's not your thing.
And creating an environment that extends beyond the stage. So the minute people walk in, the show has started, what's happening. And if you can fully engage them from the second they come in, then they're more ready to react when the show starts.
So now we're working on a new show called Wheel of Misfortune, which is the scariest game show ever. And like WII Baseball, it's a show that can only be performed with the audience. We have a host and a Vanna White and a pianist, and then the audience competes in games to win prizes. And if they lose, they have to spin the dreaded Wheel of Misfortune. So we're really excited about this because it's another experiment in active audience participation in a show that literally cannot exist without the audience being a part of it.
And we've rehearsed it twice so far, and our third rehearsal will be tomorrow night for those of you who signed up for us. And you will test out the game. Those of you who are brave enough will be contestants. And if you're in Denver, the shows are October 25th and November 1st.
So we hope you'll join us for that. To recap, to reach new audiences, you must identify who you're targeting and find programming that speaks directly to them. You should start by reaching them in ways that are comfortable and somewhat familiar to them. In our case, it was sports, and maybe not so comfortable to your organization. So it's a little risky, it's a little scary, but you kind of have to take that leap and create a situation where the stakes are low enough that it's okay if it doesn't work exactly as you had it planned.
Unify your vision. For us, it was the recipe, so that everyone can easily work under the same goals, find new languages and new approaches to support that, and curate the full experience.
And again, don't be afraid to take risks and fail and create a space, safe space, a fail-safe space.
This is a safe space.
Thank you. Where your organization can learn and grow.
And to build the audience experience into the process of the show so the audience engagement is authentic. Before, during, and after, total use of the space.
It's challenging to rehearse when the audience plays such a big role, and it's scary because you can't control everything, but it's ultimately really rewarding. I know that this sounds like fun and games, which it is, but it's also a very intentional effort on our part to discover what audiences like and where they will go with us, and to begin building new relationships with our audiences and new ways of creating work together. So we are off center, and thank you very much.
Thanks.